represent what I call the radical marijuana position, which is different than the mainstream movements that advocate legalizing marijuana, because my attitude is based on a deeper analysis of how it was possible that the single best plant on the planet for people, for food, fiber, fun, and medicine, could end up being rebranded as marijuana that's almost as bad as murder and be completely criminalized. In the 1930s, you can find its front page news that marijuana is the assassin of youth. Like the Reefer Madness movies, there are about 100 of them, but the one actually called Reefer Madness is the most famous. And, all of the things that we now watch in that movie and laugh at because they're so absurd, they were taken completely seriously back then. In the 1920s and 30s, it was like, totally serious business, that marijuana was almost as bad as murder. And that was the foundation of law. You can go and look at the House of Commons, the Hansard debate in 1938, and they're just repeating, the members of Parliament are just repeating everything that the American police have been saying, that marijuana is, an addictive narcotic that makes you criminally insane and kills you. And that's the basis of why the marijuana laws were created. The assertion that it's, what I said, an addictive narcotic makes you criminally insane and kills you, that's totally the opposite to the truth. It's never been remotely close. Marijuana has never killed anybody ever. And so the law is based on lies backed up with violence. And the violence can never make the lies become true. And so this whole situation just develops a momentum of madness that keeps on spinning faster and faster. The old poems from 19th century, Wasteland, the center cannot hold, things fly apart, mere anarchy is loosed upon the world.
Yeah.
So, that's what's happening in medical marijuana and marijuana generally. We're not getting radical truth. We're not getting hemp truth breaking through. In Canada, there was literally 60 years of complete criminalization from 1938 to 1998, when the first industrial hemp crops were allowed back. And as I said just previously, medical marijuana broke through in a few lower-level court cases in the late 1990s, and then significantly broke through because the 2000 Terry Parker case was never appealed to the Supreme Court of Canada, so that became the highest authority and forced the courts to recognize that people had a constitutional right to medical marijuana. There was the so-called Summer of Legalization, where after the Terry Parker case, the government was given a year to create a medical marijuana program, and it never did so. And so, because they didn't do what the court ordered, the government lost the entire section of the law that had prohibited the possession of marijuana. And so there was like almost 5,000 court cases that were summarily dismissed. And there was a period of time of great legal confusion. Really, without all the, what I call marijuana used medically has become what I call a magic umbrella, that it has protected people who previously would have been subject to being wiped out by the law, but they could hide under the magical umbrella of medical marijuana and be protected.
So the Terry Parker case is what made the courts recognize that, and the government recognize that marijuana is medicine, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, and you said there was a period of legal confusion and a bunch of cases were dismissed because the government didn't have legislation in place which put cannabis as illegal?
Yeah, the possession sections were struck down because, see, the way it worked is the applicable section of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms was Section 7, and the judges said that you should not have to choose between your health and obeying the law. So with somebody like Terry Parker, who suffered from severe epilepsy, that's one of the well-known things that you benefit many, not all, like it's no, with medicine, it's never 100% the same for everybody all the time. There's huge individual differences. But for large numbers of people with certain kinds of epilepsy, it greatly decreases the frequency and severity of their seizures. And being able to go to court and prove that fact, that marijuana was a medicine for him, and as well, of course, for many other people. But the judge recognized that in the case of Terry Parker, which illustrates the case of many, many other people, he should not have to choose between obeying the law and then not having marijuana and having worse seizures that were perhaps even fatal, versus having a special constitutional exemption that if you were sufficiently sick and could prove it, then you could get medical marijuana right because of Section 7. It was not justified for the government to prohibit you from accessing a medicine that was demonstrably beneficial for your particular medical condition. So the original medical marijuana rules were very restrictive. You had to prove you were almost dead before you could get it. And then they broadened and broadened and broadened and became, almost at an exponential rate. More and more people were participating in the program. And so the origin of the legal confusion was that the courts forced the government to accept the fact that marijuana was a medicine. But the government always hated that, never wanted to do that, sabotaged the program as much as they could by procrastinating and doing all kinds of things to obstruct it and undermine it. And all of their efforts to obstruct and undermine the program caused immense legal confusion. There were, like I said, there were dozens and dozens of court cases where people would be arrested for running what was called back then cannabis compassion clubs, are now more often called medical marijuana dispensaries. And the judges would, sift through all the evidence and decide that these clubs were providing benefit to their members that they couldn't get any other way. And so although the clubs were breaking the law, the judge would not impose any penalty. And so that enabled them to continue functioning, even though what they were doing was illegal. And it's become extremely unequal across Canada. In some places, like Vancouver, the oldest club is getting on almost 20 years old now. It's never been arrested. There's like 30 different medical marijuana dispensaries, and they're all selling their marijuana mostly at black market prices. And yet, in Montreal, for instance, a few years ago, all the medical marijuana dispensaries were arrested and put out of business. So in a few places, like on Vancouver Island and in Toronto, you can have all kinds of clubs that are producing and selling marijuana that do not get arrested, whereas like in another big city like Montreal, there are none. And in most of Canada, you're not allowed to run a medical marijuana compassion club, whatever you want to call it. The police will arrest you and shut you down. But in some places, the police do not enforce the law, and in those places, those businesses grow and are quite successful, make a lot of money for the entrepreneurs that vertically integrate growing and selling the medical marijuana to people who want it. So the legal confusion has just been building and building. The fundamental cause is the law was never based on anything but huge lies. And the violence that enforced those lies can never make those lies become true. It can only drive society to become more and more insane and towards a psychotic breakdown. So, pot prohibition is always just the single simplest symbol and the most extreme particular example of the general pattern of social facts. The whole world is controlled by huge lies backed up with lots of violence. And taking the single best plant on the planet for people and saying, no, that's almost as bad as murder, was absolutely absurd insanity. And yet it was enforced. And decade after decade after decade, the propaganda was to repeat those lies over and over again. they tried to make it so that only big corporations with lots of money could grow medical marijuana and sell it to people. And then there was a court injunction just a couple weeks ago where the court blocked that and continued to allow the home growers to still grow. That's just one of the many, many legal confusions that has been happening ever since.
We, as patients, were granted the injunction Friday, 3 Fridays now ago, where we are seeing two sides of this coming out now, where patients should still be able to grow their own cannabis. There's no reason they should not. The health risks and they cited are not really there. Anyone who's doing it for themselves are going to make sure they're doing it correctly, because why would they do it and not do it correctly?
Yeah.
It's a waste of time and money and energy, and they're doing this for their medicine. It doesn't make the reason. I find their reasoning to not be very valid. Anyways, we're seeing the 12 licensed producers right now have mixed reviews on the injunction, and then there's also other people about those. I don't know if you guys know very much about the whole license, what's going on, but I'll give you a little bit from what my perspective is on it. Health Canada has granted 12 companies right now licenses to sell and cultivate marijuana. From my understanding, 300 plus companies have applied to become licensed producers. And a lot more are now in their second and third stages of becoming a licensed producer, where we may see some of our dispensaries that we used to go to become licensed producers. But we don't see that necessarily yet, and we have to see what will happen. I don't know if this program will work. Majority of people I know and I talk to about this cannot afford to buy licensed producer products.
How much more expensive?
No way.
How much more expensive is the licensed producer product compared to the dispensaries?
For top quality product, they will be charging anywhere between $8 to almost $14 coming into the near future. That's 14 being like the maximum, and I don't see that being realistic yet. But I haven't seen every single LP's list, so I need to do a little more research into them all. But what we're seeing on average, 8 to 12 with some other ones. And then some LPs are putting in programs that if you buy this one strain, this all the money created from that one strain may go to this fund that gives certain grams at $4.
Okay.
Which is a help for a lot of individuals in those types of positions, which a lot of other LPs now are starting to do. They're like, this is a good idea. What do we think of this? That's one small way around it, because there is a lot of people who just can't grow, but they don't want to grow. There's no reason for them to, and it's a waste of their time. They want their medicine, and that's it. Okay, that's fine. But then there's other people who are like, this costs me pennies, and I get all the strains that I want. What I see a huge problem here is that with the new licensed producers, is that we may see a tunnel hold of strains, those unique strains that you never usually see, like a blue satellite OG that has to be personally grown. Okay, someone has to get pure blue satellite, a real OG and mate them together correctly over time, and then from that, go. That's where you start.
So basically what you're saying is some medical marijuana patients have crossbreeded different cannabis plants. Some strains don't work as well as others, and they found their certain strain that works for them. And now with this new regulation, you're saying is it's going to become harder for them to find the right strain, basically, or obtain it.
Straight up, okay. Health Canada should be renamed to Wealth Canada because they're not paying attention to anything involved regarding the health right now. They have sent us patients on a roller coaster, okay? They have not told us really what's going on. They've threatened us twice, okay? We said you're going to tell the police where we are, and if we don't tell you where, or if we destroy our plants, that you're going to do this. Well, why are you harassing sick people? It's disgusting. That this is even that whoever was behind the committee that put that letter out should be fired and not allowed in any position ever again. Because the thought process for that is, well, we need to harass these people and put them into a corner. Okay, I don't deny that the original program had problems with it. Okay, but I don't see this new program working any better. Now, I'm not saying I don't support the licensed producers, because some licensed producers are saying, listen, okay, they're paying attention to this, that you should have the right to grow your own cannabis. And they know a lot of people are not going to grow their own cannabis. They're not going to want to. Why would they? They want something like the LCBO. Okay? And as we move towards recreational sales, that model is being set up. Okay? That's what it looks like to me as someone standing by. But like I said earlier, there's over 300 companies, so your local dispensary may get in there too.
Okay.
We don't know yet. Since April 1st, since the program came into full effect and they were allowed to start selling marijuana, no new licensed producers came onto the list that you can find on overgrown.ca/LCP, which surprised me because I was expecting it, at least Health Canada to say, okay, now they're going to say that they don't have enough cannabis. Well, there's 12 producers, they're growing quite a lot, but people can't afford it. So you're putting them back into, what are we going to do? How are we going to get our medicine? Because it's not covered under any health plans here in Ontario or anywhere else that I'm aware of in Canada. Yet. But Health Canada is not caring about its patients.
Yeah.
Okay, that's straight up as it is. They do not care about their patients in this protocol. Okay? If they did, why would they say destroy your medicine? Okay, with cat litter. Where does Health Canada or the patient gain from that? Nowhere.
Yeah.
Nowhere at all. Because why would this big bag of cannabis that say $1,000 be no good? It's the strain that works for me. Okay. You want me to destroy this and now go buy more stuff that I don't have money for because I bought this.
Yeah. It's absurd.
And to put people who are already sick into a position like that makes even, like, Health Canada should be ashamed of themselves. But they don't. It seems to me that they don't really care about to get as much PR out, because a lot of people don't know what's happening to Canada's sick people right now who are using cannabis. They have no idea.
Yeah.
It looks all fine and dandy because we're getting these new sparkly, shiny LCPs. That, don't get me wrong, it looks like what I've seen is that some of the products look very, very nice. I've not tried their products yet. I plan to maybe order in the future when my supply ends or I stop growing my own. Well, from my point of view, is as the walls of prohibition are coming down, I'm looking at it as, let's look to the future. Why are scientists not, we need to be, I read an article once saying that one lab in full production in a day could be creating 168 new cannabis strains, mating them correctly, okay? That's the amount of it's a wide, vast array of cannabinoid research that needs to be done. We're seeing that it has potential to cure cancer. We're seeing that it's clearly helping children with epilepsy, and parents are noticing this. So parents are in a hard situation now. Do I go through this for this type of medicine that a lot of people are talking about? It's not just anyone, but a lot of parents are talking about this medicine because they're seeing the pharmaceuticals, they're seeing how much of an industry it is, and some people don't know this, but the drug industry is 4 times bigger than all the oil industry combined. That's what researchers show. So it's a big business, this drug business.
And basically, cannabis is a threat to that business because it has been. We've had the pleasure to interview 2 separate people who administer this medicine through oil form, and they're claiming that they're curing a lot of different diseases. The list is quite large of how many diseases plant helps with.
If you look at the history of medicine, you'll see that there were a lot of people with lots of money who started pumping some of their money into the medical schools and the medical journals.
Like Rockefellers, eh?
Yeah, their foundations, right? And so their funding was able to transform what had previously been a sort of level playing field where you had the allopaths and then the naturopaths and the herbalists and all that were kind of on an equal field. And then gradually the money going through the medical system having influence at the levels of government where the people who could give the most money to the politicians to bribe the politicians to do what they wanted, the politicians gradually built this system which favored the kind of medicine that would make the most money. And then the more money that kind of medicine made, the more they were able to use some of the profits to even more corrupt the government. So you have a profit from disease system, the same as you have a profit from junk food system. These things are all interconnected at the top of the social pyramid. But, most people see them as separate because they only see the bottom levels, right?
Yeah.
And so marijuana as a medicine fits into that overall context that the profit from disease system could not make money from marijuana.
Because it'd be curing it. You
Yeah,
can't make money off something that gets cured, right?
Yeah, it's effective medicine for a lot of people. And more importantly, if marijuana was completely legal, then you can grow it in a garden for pennies a gram. You can grow it indoors for $1 a gram. So, it's not I'm like anti-smoke. It's that smoking is like the cheapest way to consume it, in which the evidence of the crime disappears. So the idea that you're supposed to smoke marijuana is like a side effect of the prohibition, which made it criminal and expensive. Ideally, the best way to have medical marijuana is that you take the flowers and you extract the essential oil into a concentrate, and then you can vaporize that concentrated essential oil, or you can, ingest it in all kinds of different ways. You can cook it in things. You can just take it straight. So it's the essential oil that's the thing that has the desirable properties. And, there's all kinds of different techniques for extracting and concentrating the essential oil. And, because it's criminal and difficult, people use some of the worst, most dangerous techniques now. And there's far superior techniques that are theoretically available, but not commonly used. And as well, because you're operating at black market prices, concentrated oil from the plant, the essential oil from the flower, is extremely expensive compared to what it could be and should be.
When you talk with your general practitioners, you need to talk to them and say, what are the health risks involved with me using cannabis as a medicine? Your general practitioner may not always know, because cannabis may be new to them. They've followed the book. They may be a doctor. They may think cannabis still kills brain cells or is bad for you.
Yeah.
For me, I know cannabis is a health food. We should be eating it every day instead of smoking it. Because when we smoke it, we burn it and destroy 99% of the healing abilities of this plant.
Yeah, I agree. The best form of the best way to get its medicinal value is through oral ingestion, for sure.